Hi, and welcome back to my channel. It's been a while since I've made a video for my video game channel. Most of my videos that I've been making lately have been for my math tutoring channel. I've got a link to that channel in the description below if you want to check that out. If you don't want lessons about math, don't click that. But anyway, for more fun stuff, Crystal Soul Arena tier list. If any of you have been active in the Crystal Soul Arena Discord server, which I've got linked below, you'll know that I've been talking up my tier list for a little while, or how I was going to make a tier list video, but first I needed some data. And so I played 1,007 turns of Crystal Soul Arena. There we go. And what I was specifically looking for was the power of my opponent's card, and during the potential crystal destruction phase, and after costs are paid, but before crystals are gained from abilities, just how many crystals were left. So that gets you, how good is crystal destruction? And so here are the data. And here I've got the implications. What that means is, using the standard tempo measurement of whoever's winning in the game, that's measured by your health plus your crystals versus opponent's health plus opponent's crystals. So the implications of how much a 1 power card is worth, right? It's worth negative 0.96. That means, on average, you're likely to take about 2 points of damage plus gain the 1 crystal. So you're negative almost 1. I was actually surprised it was that low, but it was these few, the 5s, 6s, and 7s, and the 4s that kind of brought up the numbers. I double-checked the numbers again. Yeah, it really is that big. Now, for a 2 power card, you're at like minus 0.37, right? Between minus 0.3 and minus 0.4. 3 is about even, 4 is like plus a half, and then you start getting into positive ranges. Right? And then for crystal destruction, if you're destroying 1 crystal, there's only going to be a crystal for you to destroy about 56% of the time. Destroying 2 crystals, that's actually worth less than 1 point, a little bit less than 1 point. 3 crystals would be about a point. Or if you want to look at how often you'd have 3 crystals, right, you can evaluate that from here. Now, there isn't anything that just says destroy 3 crystals. But for stuff like Chiz Potato, you'll want to think about that a little. Anyway, with those data out of the way, now time for the actual tier list. Using Microsoft Paint, because I'm not fancy. So, leading off, for blue, we have... one last thing before I begin. I will not be tiering Wish or Wishmaker. They don't fit the standard tempo rules, and because it's tough to tell how strong the Wish deck actually is without playing against human opponents, I'll only be tiering the remaining 73 cards. So, now we actually begin. Starting off with Furan. Furan I would rank as S tier. A word about how I'm doing this tier list. Here, you'll notice I have S, A, B, and F. I'll call this graduate school grading. For those of you who've gone to graduate school, if you don't manage at least a B in the class, you fail the class. And let's actually give ourselves a little bit more room here, because there's no way I'm fitting 73 cards here. Yeah, but why would I say Furan is S tier? Because at no cost, pretty consistently, even destroying 1 crystal, right? That's worth almost half a point. At no cost. So just so consistently good. If you're going to play pretty much anything with blue in it, you probably want to run Furan. Ilmea. Really, really good if you're running mono blue. If you're running combination blue and anything else, maybe not. Kind of torn as to whether to classify that as S or A. I guess I'll go with A, just because pragmatically what this means is if you're running mono blue, then you want to run Ilmea, but often an issue that you get is that, if you're running mono one color, it's tough to actually get 10 good cards or 9 good cards plus Colosseum of one color. So just good enough to be in that deck doesn't necessarily mean it's all that good, but know that Ilmea should be a really high A. Naya. I would also, I guess I'd put at A tier, or if you're running mono blue again goes in, well, actually, I'm going to switch to B tier. Because part of my thought is just good enough to round out the bottom 10 is one thing. It's not like, if you were running combination blue and anything else, I wouldn't say that Naya would be in your good blue cards for a combination blue plus anything else deck. But Olivia probably would be. So Olivia's A tier. Dooley I don't really like. And here's why. So compare Dooley to Naya. They both are 1 power. They both gain you a crystal. For Dooley's crystal destruction, though, again, that only works when the opponent leaves a crystal to destroy, but the +1 power will always lead to 1 extra damage, pretty much, because you're 1 power. So Dooley, I would say, actually, with that many blue crystal generators, because no, I'm going to move Dooley to F tier, actually. I know, perhaps my first controversial call here, but just, unless you feel like you need to run 4 crystal generators for blue, yeah, I'm going to call Dooley F tier. No, the last blue crystal generator, definitely S tier. The only 2-drop generator for blue, yes. Umale. Okay, yeah, looks cool, but it's kind of always an awkward fit. So Umale, first of all, you can only run if you're running red-blue, or I guess 3-color, but the fact that you need to burn one of your crystals of one of your colors to get 2 more of another color, and you only get it back if your opponent plays something 3 cost or more, and so then you're just sitting on your remaining crystals. Yeah, I'd call it F tier. It's just, yeah, you kind of want something that would work well in a red-blue deck for getting both colors. Well, or, you know what, okay, let me change it. Not F tier. Because Umale has 3 power, I'm going to say B tier. I'm going to say B tier, because even just a vanilla 3 power isn't that bad, and with the ability to possibly +1 in the right situation, okay. Callie is F tier. You're destroying 2 of your own crystals in order to destroy 2 of your opponent's crystals, and you can't take damage. So everything's fine, right? Perfectly neutral. Well, 2 things. 1, you want your cards to be better than neutral. And 2, if you're destroying 2 of your own crystals, so you're really stalling yourself out more than anything else. Lastly, if your opponent still has crystals after the 2 that you destroyed, and can use them to heal or deal non-combat damage, Callie's no damage clause is only for combat damage. So in that case, Callie's just a bad play. Not to mention, if your text is ever erased, Callie is absolute trash. So because of those potential pitfalls, and that Callie is never a good play, I mean, if you get really, really lucky and can stall out your opponent, or opponent can still pay the cost, and it only gains power, and that would deal combat damage. Okay, those are really, really niche situations, though. Callie is F tier. Marie. So, erasing a card's text is kind of good. Doing it twice is good twice. That is not worth 2 crystals for. I mean, at best, erasing is denying a +1, usually. And doing that twice in a row, no, it's not. You don't gain from Marie. Even in the Marie Chiz Potato combo, you need to see that specific combo for it to work in that order. And your opponent would need a lot of crystals. No. Hilda. So if we take a look back at the data, being 6 power, on its own is a little more than a +2. So that would make it seem neutral. But the erase effect is actually really good. Typically, you want your cards to be +1ing at least like 60% of the time. You're neutralizing that. So, Hilda, I'm going to say A tier. Heaton, pretty much guaranteed neutral, burn 1, deal damage, and prevent a crystal on the next turn. Yeah, pretty good for a 3-drop. A tier. Donnell. So we pointed out that being +6 is only worth about, being 6 power is only worth about +2. You need to spend 2 to do it. And limiting your opponent to only 1 card, I mean, the opponent put cards in the deck because they were good. 1 in 3 chance that that card was the one that your opponent was going to play anyway. Decent chance it's not a bad backup. I'm going to say B tier. Mink. Burn 1 crystal, opponent draws only 1 card. That's even worse than Donnell. F tier. Gina. Okay, so very conditional +1 if your opponent plays a 1 or a 3. If your opponent plays a 2 or a 4, you could be taking a lot of damage. If your opponent gains power with any power boosts, F tier. Just no. Tilia. So there's a card like Tilia for every color, and they're all garbage. And here's why. Burning, so if you look at the difference between a 3 and a 4, just on the stats list, the difference between a 3 and a 4 is worth less than a half. And you're burning crystal for that. I guess it's not necessarily a difference between a 3 and a 4, but for most plays, you're not gaining all that much in the main range of where cards tend to be. F tier. And that goes for the other card colors as well. Alright. Lorna. I was actually kind of surprised by this. I was expecting a Lorna, nobody plays it, probably B or an F. I'm gonna say A, and here's why. While, yes, your opponent only has crystals after burning stuff, 56% of the time, but I didn't take close data on how often your opponent starts with crystals. And getting a good +1 most of that time, yeah, I'd say. So the other thing is that you know when it's going to be a good play or not. And yeah, a 2-drop +1, yeah, I'd say that's an A tier. Therese, I mean, half the time you erase the opponent's card. If that, half the time you get erased. No, F tier. Rebel. Okay, so here's where we start getting into some of the multicolor stuff. I guess, well, we started that with Damali as well. But for Rebel, so first of all, here's how you do not play Rebel. You do not play Rebel as part of a 3-color deck. You play Rebel as part of a red-green deck. So that you have rebel, and then a red and a green. Right? Or at least probably like half the time you'll have that. The other half the time you'll have this garbage rebel who has no business, so you don't play rebel that turn. I'd say that's A tier. I wouldn't say it's S tier. You wouldn't put it in. You wouldn't say, "Oh, what are you doing running a red-green deck without rebel?" Right? You've got so many good red and green cards, but I'd say that's A tier. Lena, A tier. Right? Just 2-drop, gets you a +1 on simple condition. Sama, kind of 3-drop equivalent. All right. Lyzega, S tier for mono blue. Enough said. Tanda. Oh boy. So he said destroying 2 crystals is like 85% of a point. Comes a 3-drop plus 0.85. It's not bad. I guess I'd say A tier. Helen, though, I'd say S tier. If you're running, so if you're running combination of 2 colors, each combination has a 2, a 3, and a 4 that kind of do ramped up versions of the same thing. If you look at the standard plus minus for what they do, they're all a +2 effect. But the 2-drop is the most consistent. So I would say for all of them, the 2-drop should be S tier. Tigra, on the other hand, I was gonna say B tier. I was gonna say B tier because the difference between 4 crystals and 5 crystals is really difficult. So to get 4 crystals in 2 colors, you play a generator for 1 color. Usually that gets you 2, right? 1 from the ability, 1 from getting hit. Play 1 for the other color, gets you 2 more. There, you've got 4 crystals. You need to sit on crystals for an extra turn, which gives your opponents a chance to destroy your crystals. Which, even though I'd say it's not that good of an effect, yeah. Spoiler alert: Rupture and Damus will not be ranked very high. But because of the ability for a +4, I mean, you look again at the stats. Just being a 4-drop, that's already like half a point on its own. And because of a little card called Olivia, it's actually not that hard to get 3 blue in 1 color, or sorry, 3 blue in 1 turn. I'm gonna say A tier. Not S tier. Not S tier. And you certainly, one mistake that a lot of players seem to make is saying, oh, I always want Tigra to be a +4, to be a 4-drop, so I'm going to run Tigra +9 green cards. No, don't do that. First of all, Colosseum is better. Second of all, you'll never actually use Tigra's ability, because think about what would need to happen. You need to gain a blue crystal, so Tigra would have to lose or draw in combat. Then that crystal would have to never be destroyed. Then you have to store up 4 green crystals, and then see Tigra again. So, you're never getting off Tigra's ability there. Colosseum is better if you're going to do that. But, alright, so that's all the blue cards, again, except for Wish. Now onto the red cards. Alright, onto the red cards. So, Rupture. This may surprise a lot of people. I'm going to say F tier. And here's why. So just by the numbers, we are saying that the text destroy 2 crystals, it's worth only plus 0.85. So you have a card with low power, and it self-damages you for 1, so you're net minus, and you're low power. But if you don't believe me, think about under what conditions would Rupture actually be a good play? You'd have to destroy both opponents' crystals, and the opponent would have to not +1. So under which conditions would your opponent have 2 crystals, not use them, and not be doing something else good? It's just, there's almost never a case where you're better off after your Rupture turn than before. I guess the other thing is that there are other crystal destruction options. Subis is one of them. Now, is Subis actually better? I would say so. That you destroy 2 crystals, you get to be a +5. You get to be a 5 power, right? We said 5 power here was like worth 1.3. So 1.3 plus 0.85 is a little bit more than a 2. So you're destroying 2 crystals to have better than 2 effect. So it's a net plus. Oops, what did I just do? It's a net plus. It's not a great net plus. I'd say B tier, not A tier. It's not F tier. Rupture. I actually don't know the details about how Rupture works. Because when it says pay as much life as your opponent has crystals -2, does that... So if your opponent burns crystals mid-turn, do you still pay that life? That I don't know. But let's say not. You're burning 2 crystals and paying a bunch of life to destroy all your opponent's crystals. At best, that's a break-even. At worst, you burn 2 crystals and the opponent burns all crystals and you're just at a -2 and you lose the game. F tier. Rider, yeah. Pretty decently powered crystal generator. It can't get you 2 of one color, but it's definitely, it's okay. I think it's called Grider. I don't even remember this card's name, but it's the one that self-damages you for 1. I guess I'd call it S tier. I'd call it A tier as well. It's just crystal generator. It's a more consistent crystal generator because you almost always win or draw in combat when you're playing a 4. You minus yourself for 1, but you're probably dealing 1 damage to your opponent as well. Yeah, I'd say A tier. Westeros, S tier. Again, 2 power crystal generator, pretty much always S tier. Narrator, it's effectively a 1 power, right? Because it's 2 power, but it gives the opponent 1 power. So, we'll call it A tier, right? It's like a Naya. Well, okay, here I had Naya a little lower down, but that's because Olivia pretty much had it beat. Mector. If you're gonna run a red-green deck, Mector's definitely playable. Does that make it A tier or B tier? I'll guess I go with A tier, but I think of it kind of at the border between A and B. Mana Cry. Okay, so this is one of the Crystal Hate cards. Here I just kind of have to guess around how many crystals you're likely to have before burning crystals. Sometimes it's not a garbage card, but it's pretty bad, you know, for something that's realistically never more than probably like a 3 most of the time, 3 or less most of the time. Yeah. This card, the self-damage 4-drop that if it only deals 1 damage, pluses your power. I guess I'd call that A tier. It's alright. I mean, can you come up with that many red cards that are clearly better than it, that you'd never run it in a mono red deck? No, not really. Negatron. You're erasing your text, you're erasing your opponent's text. Maybe in the pure stats deck it might... Actually, in the pure stats deck it's probably okay. A tier. And I am running out of room. Punyobot. Sometimes it's a 2, usually it's a 2, sometimes it's a 5. I gotta say B tier. Mavatron. I said that these were all Fs, and I meant it. Wishmaker I am not tiering. Flowerbot, A tier. You know, good effect for the cost. Dwanirog, as people have pointed out, that there's like never a time when it actually works out nicely. F tier. Isolapow, A tier. Good in the stats stack. That's just about it. I guess could also be a half-decent finisher if you're like only a couple damage away from winning. So A tier. Okay. Parloader. Something specific about Parloader. Usually, if a card can never plus for you, I would say that's a bad card. But what Parloader is good at is converting a winning position. If you're ahead on tempo, Parloader is really good at just keeping your advantage. And so because it's good in those situations of just closing out games, and that a lot of close games come down to, okay, you have the crystals, can you use them to deal damage? And for Parloader, that answer is always yes. A tier. Notice this does not mean you want to store up a whole bunch of crystals to surprise with a Parloader. It's that whatever extra crystals you have, and also it protects your crystals from getting destroyed. Shiz Potato, I'm gonna say B tier. What is that? B tier. It's not an absolute garbage card, but it's very situational and tough for that situation to actually pay off, right? You're essentially paying a cost of 2, 1 life, 1 crystal, to hope that your opponent leaves at least 2 crystals, which, as we've kind of seen, doesn't happen very often. And so, look at how hard it would be to do more than a +1, right? Like 10-ish% of the time. 12-ish% of the time. So, really high potential payoff, but doesn't actually... Okay, you may have caught a mistake earlier. This card is Flammabot. This is Mabatoire. So, for Mabatoire, you pay 3 to gain +4 power over the next 2 turns, but again, power is not worth its own number, right? That's one of the big noob traps, is thinking that massive power numbers are worth that many damage. They're not. Does that make it B tier or F tier? I guess I'd say B tier. Right? I guess if you're running it in the stats decks that you can really capitalize. Alright. Kind of hard to see what these are, but I'm gonna just to save on time and space. Let's do only these half cards. Box Punter. A tier. Alright. Good effect for the cost. Exegator. A tier. Actually, well, no, I'm gonna say S tier if you're running mono red. Yeah. Just like I said for Lizette. Natfire. S tier if you're running red blue. Same reason as Helen. And Cynthia, I was gonna say B tier, but I've gotta say A tier now, just because I underestimated how good being a 4 was. And again, because Olivia can get you those 3 blue crystals. Again, you just Olivia, Whisperus, and then you can Cynthia right away. And Panatasis, I'm actually going to say S tier. Even though normally I'd be saying, well, it's... So the 3-drop version is normally, I'd say, an A tier just because it's hard to pull off. Panatasis is the strongest of those 3-drop 2-color cards because the effect doesn't include crystal destruction. So you always +2 playing a Panatasis. Alright. Last but not least, the greens. So, for the green, Damus. So as I was saying about Rupture, crystal destruction is not particularly strong. But I'm actually going to call this a B tier, not an F tier. And so what are some of the differences between Damus and Rupture? 1. 3 power is better than 2 power. 2. If neither you nor the opponent have crystals, such as on turn 1 of the game, an empty 3-drop is okay. A 2-drop in self-damage is not. And finally, is there any other time when you just don't have crystals? An empty 3-drop is almost never a terrible play. A 2-drop, that self-damages you. So I guess it's kind of the same as what I was saying before, but yeah. B tier. Oh, also one other thing. So Rupture actually has alternatives. Right? If you really feel like you need crystal destruction because there's a particular deck that counters yours that you can compete with if you destroy crystals, okay. Vedan. So often I'll say, well, don't get drawn in too much by the high power trap. You burn 3 crystals to +7. What did we say? Sorry, not to +7, but to 7 power. What did we say 7 power was? 7 power is a 321. But then the ability to destroy 2 crystals, possibly. You're averaging a +1. I wouldn't call Vedan S tier if you're running blue-green, but I'd definitely say A tier. Because, again, if you're burning 3 crystals multicolor, you expect better than a +1, but I'll say A tier. It's not a bad play. Hellness. I feel like there are better crystal generators out there. If your opponent plays... Well, I guess against a 2-drop, you're still a +1, aren't you? Still, because green has such good crystal generators, I'm going to say B tier. Mista, despite being only 1 power, if you're going to play blue-green, I'd say you got to play it. S tier in that case. Blueless, usually a +1, but not always, but still, 2-drop. 2-drop that does get you an extra crystal, S tier. 2-drop that usually gets you an extra crystal, A tier. 1-drop for an extra crystal. I'd call that like an Olivia or a Naya, because there isn't really the Olivia alternative. Yeah, I'll say A tier. Krogus. 2-drop, consistently gets you an extra crystal, can stave off damage in the late game, S tier. Okay, Qualidos. Just for being, I'll say A tier for, well, yeah, it prevents your crystals from being broken. It's never a bad play because of its ability. Just, well, if your opponent's getting an off-field plus, I'll switch it to B. Now, granted, Qualidos is usually run in a Wish deck, so maybe that's not such a big deal, but... Zorilus. So, if there's a debuff played against you, that's obviously a really good play. If there's a debuff that you... I've never played with Zorilus. How good did we say a 5 was again? We said a 5 was only a plus 1.3. I won't call it F tier, I'll call it B tier. So Lapras... Not sure whether to go A or B. A 3-drop that sometimes effectively plus 1s. At low cost. You definitely run it. Yeah, I'd say you definitely run it in a mono green deck, but again, if you're just rounding off the top 10, or top 9 with Cobuzin, I'd say you're not really particularly excited to play this card. B tier. Cobuzin. Again, 7 power is worth about a 3. You burn 3 crystals to do that. You limit your opponent to only drawing 1 card. How good is that extra effect? I guess I gotta say, like, it's a just 1 extra crystal burn, one more base power version of Denel. And Denel's B tier, so Cobuzin's also B tier. Cobuzin is S tier. There's just... If you are running mono, just a single color deck, you run Cobuzin. Case closed. Grainwincer, something of a noob trap card, right? You feel like it's a definite plus, right? You burn 1 crystal, you gain 2 power, but 2 power is not 2 damage. Look back again at what we said the difference between a 3 and a 5 was. It's like 1.2 something. I'm going to say B tier. Ecofear is F tier, for reasons I've already talked about with the other colors. Panchang. Panchang. Yet another noob trap card. It is not an absolutely overpowering, unfair card like I thought it was in my first week of playing. It's... so... yeah, I guess if you want to counter a Cobuzin deck, or like something that runs Vedan and Cobuzin, I guess that's in the meta now. Okay. That's why I won't say it's F tier, but... so, if your opponent plays something that's a 1 or a 2, you are losing tempo by playing it. If your opponent plays a 3, you're even. Your opponent has to play 4 or more for you to gain. B tier. T-Grounder can never plus for you. I mean, it's... so converting a position, right, okay, yeah, like, if your opponent's at 1 health and you're at 3, it can pretty consistently help you win a game there. But needing to wait all the way until the end, it's not converting a position in the same way as a card like Parloader is. And it is absolute trash if you're behind on health. Not just behind on tempo, behind on health. And it's not good when you're behind on tempo either. I'm going to say F tier. Kriskis, there are times when you know your opponent is going to try to gain crystals. 2 on its own is like a negative 0.37, but it also means you can't give it a crystal by just being strong, right? You can't give your opponent a crystal just by being strong. Do I go A or B? I guess I'm going to go B, but I feel like it's really on the border. Topati. Sometimes deals +2 to you, deals 2 damage to you, sometimes deals 2 damage to your opponent. You sure don't want this thing getting erased. You sure don't want this to go up against a 4 or 5. I wouldn't say F tier, but I'd say it's a B tier. Pestilos, good effect for the cost, A tier. Damzoris, good effect for the cost, A tier. Gudraris, much like Exegator and Lysetta, S tier. If you're running mono green, you're running Gudraris. Maxisur, S tier, much like Natfire and Helen. Would run it on. 2 reasons why Would run it on is worse than its counterparts, Tigra and Cynthia. 1, Would run it on can't benefit from Olivia. So getting that 5th crystal is tough. 2, if you want that 4-drop, Rebel is arguably a better play. So because it can be replaced by something arguably better, Would run it on is B tier. Lindeen, A tier. A +1 or a +2 off the ability. I wouldn't say as good as Panaticus, just because if your opponent doesn't have crystals, which 44% of the time your opponent won't have crystals, it's only +1, but still. And finally, Royce. So, alright. 3 color decks can be really, really inconsistent. But, with the system I've been using, I say, how good is it for the deck that it's in? And if you're running 3 colors, and not Wish, the whole point of running 3 colors is to run Royce. So I'd have to say S tier. And there we go. Think I'm crazy? Think I'm a genius? Think this is wisdom? Think it's malarkey? Whatever it is, here's my tier list. Thank you for watching this long, drawn-out video all the way to the end. And hopefully this will help you with some deck building thoughts. I do plan to release more videos for Crystal Soul Arena. There are a couple of deck profiles that I think are particularly interesting. There's one that I think is really interesting, and I haven't seen anything quite like it, that I'm currently using as part of a tournament. So as not to give away, so as not to tip my hand, I will be waiting till after the tournament to talk about it. But yeah, stay tuned for more videos. And no, I won't usually be using MS Paint. It's just, it was the best thing that I could think of for manually doing a tier list. I know there are sites out there, but I didn't want to have to take the time to learn how to use that for just this one tier list. If I do a lot more other tier lists, sure. But, alright. And with that, hope you found this informative. And good night.